Lily Chen woke up choking for air. Her chest rose sharply as if she had been pulled back from deep water. Pain still lingered in her bones, phantom pain, but when she opened her eyes, there was no hospital light, no smell of disinfectant, no sound of medical machines. Instead, there was a low ceiling with a crack running through it like a thin scar. A cheap curtain fluttered slightly near the window. The hum of traffic drifted in from outside. This room. Her room. Lily froze. Her heart began to pound violently as memories rushed in, messy and cruel. Blood-soaking white sheets. A nurse calling her name again and again. The sound of a baby crying, then silence. She remembered dying. I died, she whispered hoarsely. She sat up too fast and felt dizzy. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her stomach. Flat. Warm. Alive. Tears welled up instantly. She covered her mouth, afraid she would scream. Her phone vibrated on the bedside table. The sound was ordinary, but to her, it was terrifying. Lily slowly turned her head and looked at the screen. Ethan. The name stabbed into her chest. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the phone. The screen lit up clearly. 8:42 p.m. 6 years ago. Tonight. This was the night. The night she had rehearsed in her head 100 times. The night she had planned to smile gently and tell him, "I'm pregnant." The night she believed love would protect her. In her last life, she had gone to the cafe carrying hope in her chest and fear in her hands. In her last life, she had trusted him. Her phone vibrated again. Ethan, I'm almost there. Are you inside already? Lily stared at the message for a long time. Her breathing slowly steadied. Images surfaced one by one, painfully clear. Ethan sitting across from her, brows tightly knit. His long silence after she told him. The way his hand pulled back, just slightly. The excuse about his parents. The engagement announcement 3 days later. She's pregnant. Poor girl. She should have known her place. She remembered the whispers. The loneliness. The humiliation. She remembered sitting alone in a hospital corridor, holding her belly, listening to other families laugh and talk. And she remembered dying, giving birth alone, holding on to a life that would never know its father. Her vision blurred. No, Lily said softly, almost calmly. Not this time. She stood up and walked to the mirror. The woman reflected there was young, pale, with soft features and eyes that still carried kindness. But behind that kindness now lived something deeper. Clarity. In her last life, she had believed telling the truth would change everything. Now she knew better. Sometimes, silence was survival. The doorbell rang. Lily's body stiffened. For a brief second, habit nearly won. Her feet almost moved on their own toward the door. Then she stopped. She looked at the phone again. Ethan. She opened the message box. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. In her last life, she had walked toward him. This time, she turned away. Lily, I'm not feeling well. Let's talk another day. She sent the message. Then she powered off the phone. The room fell quiet. Outside, the city kept moving, indifferent. Lily leaned against the door and slowly slid down until she was sitting on the floor. Her knees pulled in close to her chest. Only then did she allow herself to cry. The tears came silently, sliding down her face without sound. They weren't desperate like before. They were heavy, grieving not just for the pain she remembered, but for the version of herself that had once believed love alone was enough. I won't beg, she whispered into the empty room. I won't hope. Her hand moved instinctively to her lower abdomen. I'll protect you, she said, voice steady now. Even if no one else does. Across the city, Ethan Wu stood outside the cafe, checking his phone repeatedly. He frowned slightly. Not feeling well? He hesitated, then typed a reply, but the message failed to send. He frowned again, an unfamiliar uneasiness settling in his chest. He looked up at the cafe sign, then back at the dark phone screen. Maybe tomorrow, he muttered to himself. He turned and walked away, never knowing that the woman behind him had just changed the course of both their lives. Back in the small rented room, Lily wiped her face, stood up, and opened the window. Cold night air rushed in. She breathed deeply. The past was still there. But the future. The future was finally hers to choose. The morning sickness came quietly. Lily didn't rush to the bathroom or throw up violently like she had seen in movies. Instead, it sat in her throat like a dull weight, making even the smell of cooking oil unbearable. She stood in the kitchen of her small apartment, staring at a bowl of plain porridge, spoon unmoving. It's real, she thought. She was pregnant. Again. But this time, there was no panic. Only responsibility. Lily packed her things 2 weeks later. She didn't leave in a dramatic way, no confrontation, no messages. She simply moved out of the apartment she once shared with Ethan and rented a single room near the edge of the city. The landlord was an older woman with sharp eyes. No husband? She asked bluntly. Lily shook her head. The woman looked at her belly, then at her face. After a moment, she sighed. Pay rent on time. That's enough. Lily bowed slightly. Thank you. The room was small. The walls were thin. At night, she could hear the neighbor's television and the sound of traffic outside. But it was hers. She told only one person. Her aunt, May, sat across from her at the small dining table, hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea. You're keeping it? May asked quietly. Yes. Does Ethan know? Lily shook her head again. May closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. Your parents would lose their minds. They don't need to know yet, Lily said gently. May looked at her niece for a long time. Raising a child alone isn't bravery. It's suffering. Lily smiled faintly. I've already suffered once. That ended the conversation. At work, things changed. Her supervisor began giving her lighter tasks, not out of kindness, but caution. Co-workers glanced at her belly and then quickly looked away. In the break room, conversations stopped when she entered. She's not married, right? Do you know who the father is? Girls these days. Lily ate her lunch quietly and returned to her desk. She remembered how in her last life, these whispers had crushed her. How she had gone home crying, wondering what she had done wrong. This time, she straightened her back. I did nothing wrong, she reminded herself. The pressure grew heavier when her parents found out. Her mother cried the moment she saw Lily. Her father didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Where is the man?" "He's not in my life," Lily replied calmly. Her father slammed his hand on the table. "Then get rid of it." The word cut deep, but Lily didn't flinch. "I won't." Silence filled the room. Her mother whispered, "How will you live?" Lily bowed her head slightly. "I'll work." She left that night and didn't return. Months passed. Her belly grew round. Her steps became slower. But Lily continued working, studying, saving every bit of money she could. Some nights, exhaustion hit so hard she sat on the floor and couldn't stand up for minutes. Still, she endured. The day she went into labor, it was raining heavily. The taxi driver glanced at her through the mirror. "No family with you?" Lily shook her head. "Just drive." In the hospital, she signed the forms alone. Pain came in waves, sharp, merciless. She screamed once, then bit her lip and stayed silent. Hours later, a cry pierced the air. "It's a boy," the nurse said. Lily turned her head weakly. The baby's skin was red, his fists tightly clenched. His cry was strong. Tears slid down Lily's temples. "Noah," she whispered. "Your name is Noah." When the nurse placed him in her arms, Lily's breath caught. He looked like Ethan. The same straight nose. The same long eyelashes. Her fingers tightened unconsciously. For one terrifying second, she wondered if fate was mocking her. Then she exhaled. "He's mine," she said softly, as if reminding herself. After leaving the hospital, reality hit harder. Rent. Diapers. Formula. Time. Lily took on freelance work at night, rocking Noah to sleep with one hand while typing with the other. Sometimes, when he cried endlessly at 2 a.m., she would sit on the bed, holding him close, tears falling silently. "I'm sorry," she whispered to him more than once. "I don't have much." Noah stared at her with wide eyes. Then he stopped crying. That was when Lily knew. She wasn't alone anymore. One evening, Aunt May visited and watched Lily gently feed Noah. "You don't regret it?" May asked. Lily looked down at her son. "No," she said without hesitation. Outside, the city lights flickered on. Lily didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing. She would never hand her fate to anyone else again. Time moved faster than Lily expected. The first year was a blur of sleepless nights and exhaustion. The second year was slightly easier. By the third, Lily had learned how to survive without constantly feeling like she was drowning. Noah grew quickly. He was a quiet child, observant, rarely crying. Even as a toddler, he seemed to understand when Lily was tired. When she worked late at night, he would sit beside her with his picture books, turning pages carefully, as if afraid to make noise. "Mom," he asked once, pointing to a drawing of a family in a book, "is this what we are?" Lily looked at the picture. A father. A mother. A child. She closed the book gently. "Families come in many forms." Noah nodded seriously. "Then we're a family too." Lily smiled and kissed his forehead. "Yes." They moved to a slightly bigger apartment when Noah turned 4. It was still small, but it had sunlight and a tiny balcony where Lily grew green onions in old pots. She changed jobs, then changed again. From an assistant to a planner. From a planner to a manager. She spoke less but listened more. She learned how to read people, how to protect herself, how to negotiate without raising her voice. At work, she was known as reliable. Calm. Sharp. No one knew much about her personal life. And she liked it that way. Across the city, Ethan Wu's life looked perfect from the outside. He married Grace Lynn in a grand ceremony. The Wu family was satisfied. Grace came from money, connections, and reputation. She knew how to speak at dinners, how to smile at elders, how to keep her distance without offending anyone. She fit. Ethan told himself he was lucky. Their marriage was polite. They ate together when schedules allowed. They discussed work, investments, travel plans. They never fought loudly. But they never talked deeply either. When Ethan's mother asked about children, Grace smiled gently. "We're not in a rush." Doctors found no issues. Still, no child came. At night, Ethan often worked late. Sometimes, while driving home, he would stop at a red light and suddenly think of Lily. Not often. Just enough to unsettle him. He couldn't remember when it started, only that sometimes, her face would appear in his mind for no reason at all. A calm smile. A quiet gaze. He told himself it was nostalgia. Nothing more. Lily's parents eventually stopped calling. At first, it hurt. Then it didn't. Aunt May remained her only bridge to the past. She visited often, bringing food, small toys, practical advice. One evening, she watched Noah carefully arrange his shoes by the door. "He's very well-mannered," May said softly. Lily nodded. "He watches everything." May hesitated, then asked, "Does he ever ask about his father?" Lily paused. "Sometimes. And I tell him the truth," Lily replied calmly. "That his father made a choice, and so did I." May sighed. "You're too gentle." Lily smiled faintly. "I'm firm where it matters." Noah entered elementary school. On the first day, Lily walked him to the gate. Other children clung to their parents. Some fathers crouched down to fix backpacks or tie shoelaces. Noah stood straight. "Mom," he said, "you don't have to worry." She bent down and adjusted his collar. "I know." As she watched him walk inside, something tightened in her chest. Not regret. Pride. That afternoon, his teacher called. "He's very smart," she said. "And unusually calm for his age." Lily thanked her and hung up. That night, Noah showed her a test paper with a perfect score. "You did great," Lily said, genuinely smiling. He looked up at her. "Is that enough?" She paused, then answered carefully. "You don't need to be enough for anyone. Just be kind." Noah nodded. Ethan attended a business banquet one night. The room was full of laughter and glasses clinking. Conversations flowed around investments, partnerships, success. Someone mentioned an old cafe near the university. Ethan froze for half a second. He didn't know why. On the drive home, he passed by the street where Lily used to live. The building was old, lights uneven. He slowed down unconsciously, then laughed at himself and drove on. Grace noticed his distraction more often now. "You've been distant lately," she said one evening. Ethan hesitated. "Just work." She looked at him quietly but didn't press. Their marriage had learned long ago where not to step. One rainy afternoon, Lily picked Noah up from school. He ran toward her, holding an umbrella too big for him. She smiled. They stood waiting for the bus when Noah suddenly asked, "Mom, do you ever feel lonely?" Lily looked at him. The rain fell steadily. She thought of long nights. Silent rooms. Choices made and never spoken. Then she squeezed his hand. "Sometimes," she answered honestly. "But not today." Noah smiled. The bus arrived. Neither of them noticed that fate was already preparing for their paths to cross again. Lily did not expect to see Ethan woo again. When the email arrived inviting her company to join a strategic partnership meeting in her old city, she hesitated for less than a minute before accepting. Business was business. She had built her life carefully, brick by brick. One name from the past would not shake it. At least, that's what she told herself. She arrived early at the conference center. The room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. Lily set her laptop on the table, adjusted her blazer, and reviewed her notes calmly. She was no longer the woman who waited. She was the woman people waited for. The door opened. Footsteps echoed. Lily looked up and met Ethan's eyes. Time stalled. Ethan froze at the entrance as if someone had abruptly pulled the ground from under his feet. The name on the nameplate before him blurred. Lily Chen. Not a memory. Not a shadow. Real. Standing less than 10 meters away. She looked different. Sharper. Quieter. Her posture was straight, her gaze steady. There was no hesitation in her expression, no surprise, no bitterness. Just composure. "Hello," Lily said first, voice calm and professional. "Long time no see." Ethan's mouth opened, then closed again. "Lily." The meeting began. Voices filled the room. Slides were presented. Discussions moved forward. Ethan heard nothing. He kept glancing at Lily from the corner of his eye, searching her face for something: anger, sadness, accusation. There was nothing. She spoke clearly when it was her turn. She made precise points. She negotiated without raising her voice. She did not look at him again. When the meeting ended, Ethan stood abruptly. "Lily," he said, too quickly. "Can we talk?" She paused, then nodded politely. 5 minutes. They stepped into the hallway. The silence between them was heavy but not awkward. Ethan finally said. "You've been well?" "Yes," Lily replied. "You?" He hesitated. "Fine." That was all they exchanged. Then a child's voice broke the moment. "Mom." Ethan turned. A boy stood a few steps away, holding a small backpack. He was tall for his age, neat, with dark eyes that seemed too familiar. The world tilted. Ethan's breath caught painfully. The boy looked at him briefly, politely, then returned his gaze to Lily. "Are we done?" the child asked. Lily nodded. "Yes." Ethan stared openly now. "How old is he?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Lily met his eyes. 6. 6. The number slammed into his chest. The boy's age matched something he had never allowed himself to think about. "He looks," Ethan's voice wavered. "He looks like me." Lily smiled faintly. "Many children do," she said evenly. She placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is my son, Noah." Ethan swallowed hard. Noah looked at him calmly, without curiosity or fear. There was no recognition in his eyes. No pull. No confusion. Just distance. "Nice to meet you," Noah said politely. Ethan could barely speak. "You too." Lily checked her watch. "I have another meeting." She nodded once, formal, final, and turned to leave. Ethan stood there, unable to move. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The boy's face replayed in his mind. The shape of his eyes. The way he stood. The calmness that mirrored someone Ethan once knew too well. A question rose in his throat like poison. But he did not ask it. Grace noticed his restlessness. "You're distracted again," she said quietly. Ethan hesitated. Then shook his head. "Just work." She studied him for a moment. "You met someone today." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Ethan admitted. "An old acquaintance." Grace didn't press further. She had learned the cost of asking questions without answers. Over the next few days, Ethan found excuses to appear near Lily's meetings. He watched from a distance. He saw how Noah waited patiently, how he followed Lily without clinging, how their movements fit together naturally. Like a practiced routine. Like a life built without him. One afternoon, Ethan overheard Lily speaking to Noah softly. "Did you wait long?" "No," Noah replied. "I finished my book." "You didn't bother anyone?" "No." "Good." There was pride in Lily's voice. Something inside Ethan cracked. That night, he poured himself a glass of wine and sat alone in his study. The past he had buried began to rise. The cafe. The night she cancelled. The silence that followed. For the first time in years, regret was no longer abstract. It had a face. A name. A child who should not exist, and yet did. Lily packed her things the day before leaving the city. She stood by the window, watching the city lights. Noah sat on the bed, reading. She had seen Ethan's eyes. She knew. But she would not speak. Some truths, once missed, did not deserve a second chance. Ethan Wu finally understood something he had avoided for years. Some mistakes did not arrive loudly. They waited. They waited until a man was comfortable, successful, surrounded by approval. And then showed him what he had lost. He stood across the street from Lily's hotel, hands in his coat pockets, watching the entrance like someone waiting for a verdict he already knew. She came out holding Noah's hand. The boy was wearing a simple jacket, his backpack slung neatly over one shoulder. He walked half a step behind Lily, close but not clinging. When she paused to answer a phone call, Noah stopped too, waiting quietly. Ethan's throat tightened. "That should have been my place," a voice whispered. But he didn't move. Lily finished the call and crouched slightly to adjust Noah's collar. "Is it cold?" she asked. Noah shook his head. "I'm fine. If you feel tired, tell me. I will." Their conversation was brief. Ordinary. Natural. That was what hurt the most. They didn't look like people missing something. They looked complete. Ethan turned away before they noticed him. At home, Grace sat at the dining table, documents spread neatly in front of her. "You're back early," she said without looking up. Ethan sat down slowly. "Grace," he said after a long pause, "do you ever think about other lives?" She stopped flipping pages. "What kind of question is that?" He searched for words and failed to find any that were safe. "Nothing," he said finally. Grace studied his face carefully. She had lived with this man long enough to recognize distance when it appeared. "There's something you're not telling me," she said calmly. Ethan met her eyes. "I don't think it would change anything," he replied. Grace looked away. They both understood the unspoken rule of their marriage. Some doors stayed closed not because they were locked, but because opening them would destroy the house. The night before Lily left the city, Noah asked a question she had expected for years. "Mom," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "that man from the meeting, does he know you?" Lily paused while folding clothes. "Yes," she answered honestly. "From before me?" "Yes." Noah thought for a moment. "Is he my dad?" Lily's hands stilled. She did not rush. She sat beside him and met his eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "He is." Noah absorbed that without shock. "Why doesn't he come with us?" he asked. Lily smiled gently. "Because families are built by choices, not blood." Noah nodded slowly. "Then you're enough," he said. Her breath caught for just a second. "Yes," she replied softly. "We are enough." On the day Lily left, the train station was crowded. People hurried past, dragging suitcases, speaking into phones, reuniting and parting all at once. Ethan stood near the platform, hands clenched, watching from a distance. Lily and Noah walked toward the gate. For a brief moment, Lily felt it. That familiar sensation of being watched. She turned. Their eyes met. Time stretched thin. Ethan took a step forward. Then stopped. He wanted to say everything. "I'm sorry. I was weak. I didn't know. I should have fought harder." But none of those words could cross the years between them. Lily held his gaze calmly. There was no anger there. No accusation. Only understanding and distance. She nodded once. A small, polite gesture. Then she turned and walked away, Noah's hand in hers. The train doors closed. Ethan stood frozen as the train pulled away. Only when it disappeared did his shoulders slump. He had not lost her today. He had lost her 6 years ago. Today was only the proof. Years later, Ethan would sometimes see a boy who looked like Noah in a crowd and feel his chest tighten for no reason. He would sometimes wake up at night, reaching for something that was never there. Grace would live her composed life. Lily would grow her business. Noah would grow tall and kind. No one would ever speak the truth out loud again. But regret, once born, never needed words to survive. It simply stayed. Quiet. Permanent. Noah was 18 when he finally understood the weight of silence. It wasn't something Lily had ever forced on him. She never spoke badly about Ethan Wu, nor did she romanticize absence. She treated the truth like a closed drawer available, but never opened without reason. Noah had grown up well. He entered a top university. He spoke calmly, thought carefully, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who had raised him. On the day he left for college, Lily stood in the doorway of their apartment, watching him adjust his backpack. "You don't need to walk me down," he said. "I know," Lily replied, smiling. "But I want to." They walked together anyway. That night, Lily sat alone for the first time in years. The apartment felt larger. Too quiet. She made tea and stood by the window, looking at the city lights. She did not feel lonely. She felt complete. Ethan Wu's life slowed as he aged. Success had given him comfort, not peace. Grace and he lived separate lives under the same roof. They were polite to the end. When they divorced, it was handled quietly, efficiently, without scandal. No one asked why. He moved into a smaller apartment near the river. On weekends, he walked alone, hands in his coat pockets, watching families pass by. Sometimes, he wondered what Noah sounded like when he laughed now. Sometimes, he imagined a life where he had chosen differently. Those thoughts always ended the same way. Too late. Years later, Lily received an unexpected message. A university event. An alumni business networking dinner. She almost declined. Then she accepted. The venue was familiar. So was the man standing near the window. Ethan looked older. Thinner. Quieter. When he saw her, he didn't look surprised. "I heard you'd be here," he said. "Yes," Lily replied. Briefly. They stood in silence. Then Ethan spoke, his voice steady but low. "He knows," he said. Lily nodded. "He always did." Ethan swallowed. "Did I hurt him?" Lily looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said honestly. "You didn't shape his life." That answer hurt more than any accusation. "I'm glad," Ethan said quietly, "that you both did well." Lily nodded once. "We did." There was nothing else to say. They parted without looking back. Noah met Ethan once. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. They stood across from each other in a quiet cafe. Ethan recognized him instantly. Noah did too. "I'm Noah," he said politely. "I know," Ethan replied. They talked about school. Work. The weather. Nothing else. When Noah stood to leave, Ethan finally said, "Your mother raised you well." Noah smiled faintly. "She did." Then he left. Ethan stayed seated long after the coffee grew cold. That night, Lily asked Noah gently, "Are you okay?" "Yes," he answered. "I was curious. Now I'm not." She nodded, accepting that. Families were not always made of presents. Sometimes, they were made of endurance. Of choosing to stay. Of choosing to be enough. Lily turned off the lights and went to bed. Outside, the city moved on. So did they.